Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
My marriage feels like it's on life support, and I'm starting to wonder if it's time to pull the plug. My spouse has made it clear that cheating on me is on the horizon, even threatening me with it, leaving me to spend the past year constantly on edge, bracing for when it might happen. People keep telling me, just file for divorce, it's emotional abuse. Or, stop whining and leave already. But the thing is, I love him. We've been through so much just to be together. And the thought of becoming another failed marriage statistic at 35 is crushing. On top of that, I still dream of having more kids with him, so you can imagine the struggle I'm facing. We met back in college, both attending the University of Georgia sometime in the early 2000s. We were both studying to become veterinarians, a program UGA is known for. I went into small animal care, while he focused on livestock. But after a couple of years, he realized his true calling was in long-haul trucking, and he left the vet program. Now, he delivers pork chops on an express route to Las Vegas, and the man is a machine. He manages the run in under 24 hours every time. He once told me, "Honey, I never drive faster than I can see." Besides that, it's all in the reflexes. Even after his career change, which I fought against and lost, we certainly aren't hurting for money. Anyway, as I said, we met at A&M in Bryan, Texas. I had been rather sexually active, but I had cooled it for the last few months while I looked towards my future. I had scouted out a couple of likely candidates, both around 5 feet 10 inches with swimmers' bodies and, what I could tell through their genes, reasonably well equipped. I ended up picking Jack and set about the conquest. Like I said, I was not a virgin, but it's easy to fool people about virginity. You just act clumsy, and for girls you lie and claim it hurts. Nobody checks anymore. This isn't the Middle Ages. Jack certainly didn't pick up on it, so my ruse was successful to a point. The failure was in the fact that while the pill was being used, it was accidentally contravened by antibiotics due to a sinus infection. So just after I got my diploma, my water broke and we had to go to the delivery room. Yeah, if you didn't pick up on it, I'm Mrs. Burton now. Or at least I still am for the moment, depending on where we go from here. My name is Gracie. Our daughter's name is Margaret, although she prefers Margot. She is most definitely her daddy's girl. We don't get along well. I think it is because we both are schemers. All throughout our marriage, I have been occasionally unfaithful. I simply can't help it. I have a sex addiction, and Jack is not up to my level in the bedroom. I didn't marry him for that anyway. I married him because he was easy to control and because he was going to be a good earner. Maybe that sounds cold to you, but then you probably live in a trailer and drive a Ford. I drive a Mercedes and live in a mansion. If you chose to settle or didn't prepare for the future, don't judge me. Jack has never cheated on me. He used to be like an adorable puppy that followed me around. I taught him everything in the bedroom. Thankfully, he bought my claim that I learned it all from the internet. I say that he isn't up to my level in bed, but he is damn close now thanks to my training. Of course, since that fateful day a year ago, he has also been willing to throw some plain old hardcore screwing my way, which might be why I am so sad at our possible dissolution. You see, everyone gets caught at some point. In my case, while I was out getting serviced by a hung Dominican national on a student visa, that my daughter was screwing me behind my back. The little brat skipped school and filmed my sex session in high definition on the camera phone I bought her. God, I should have had her aborted. But she did lock Jack to me while we were younger and in doubt. Decisions, hindsight is never helpful when you need it. When I got home that day, I saw her smirk at me and run upstairs. It was then that I walked into the living room and straight into a nightmare. On the TV was my most recent sexcapade. Jack was seated in front of it with tears streaming from his eyes and keening sound emanating from his chest. As I proceeded to make love to the huge man on the screen, my husband self-destructed slowly in front of me. I was frozen. My mind told me to run over and snatch out the power cord to the power supply for the entertainment center, but my body was in shock. In a perfect world, even at this stage my husband would have been happy to see me perform like the scene that played in front of him. Then we could have just had an understanding. But that was not to be, as he finally leapt up and threw the remote into our very expensive UHD flat screen. His head swiveled like a turret to face me. His eyes met mine, and all I could see was blind rage or hatred. I couldn't tell for sure which. Jack, I can explain. It was... Yeah, it was an accident or an act of God, right? I thought I knew the difficulties between men and women, how it seldom works out. Yet I kept trying like a fool. His hands were clenching and unclenching. His breathing was erratic. For the first time since I had met him, I actually felt fear that he might hurt me. Strangely, it sounded like he wasn't surprised by my affair, but I didn't have time to contemplate it. Instead, He ran into the garage and I heard his truck start up, an old Ford that he kept in running condition. He always joked it gave him farm cred when he used to go out and service his animal patients. Even when he gave up being a vet, he kept that stupid pickup. Directly after that, I heard the automatic garage door start to open, and before I could race out into the driveway, I could see through the glass of the front window that he was peeling out into the residential street. Please, God, let him wear his seatbelt, I heard. My spawn was on the stairwell glancing out the picture window as well. What the hell do you care? You did this to him. I shouted. What do you mean I did this to him? My hopefully soon-to-be ex-mother. I didn't screw a guy almost young enough to be my child while married to a man that only thinks rainbows and puppies come out when I pass gas. You are so monumentally naive. What an evil little bitch I raised. I needed her out of here. I started to put together a plan to salvage my life, and the first step was to ship the prude off to her grandparents. After I confiscated her phone, of course, and destroyed the disc she had burned for her father to watch. You are going to visit your mama and papa. I would advise you not to mention any of this to them. You no longer have any proof, and I can certainly make life extremely difficult for you while you still live under this roof. You are crazy if you think I can't control your father once he calms down. So, my loving daughter, fruit of my loins, don't screw with me. I screamed at the end. She ran upstairs, scared I thought, but then I didn't know about the cloud at that point. Stupid computers. A day passed. My daughter was safely stowed away where she couldn't hurt me further, and my husband finally came home. His eyes were red, and he looked like he hadn't yet slept. I had rubbed my eyes furiously when I heard him pull up and I hadn't changed clothes. After some artful arrangement, when he came into the living room, it also looked like I was in drastic shape. I carefully breathed out in a little girl's voice, "Please forgive me. I must have had a breakdown. I don't know what came over me for me to let it happen." His look was cold, even though his pain. His look was full of some unfathomable emotion. I slowly rose and wrapped my arms around him, but I noticed he didn't return the gesture. He simply stood like a fence post or a tree, unbending. I failed you, us, and our daughter. I can't fix what I did. I still love you and I won't fight it if you want to leave me. I took a calculated risk. It could go either way, but I think the odds were definitely in my favor. He finally spoke. Would you stop rubbing your body up against mine? Because I can't concentrate when you do that. I'm tired and I need more time to think without your influence. I'm going to go sleep in the bedroom for a bit, with the door locked, so you need to get whatever you need out of there and go to the spare bedroom. Good. He didn't bite on the divorce gambit. I ran upstairs and grabbed some things from the closet and master bathroom, then carried them into the spare bedroom down the hall. As I was coming back, I heard the lock click on the door. I tapped on the door lightly. Jack, can we at least talk soon? We can talk in the morning. Sit tight, hold the fort, and keep the home fires burning. If I'm not awake by dawn, call the president. Now was the hard part. I needed to look even worse, so I avoided drinking water or eating. I messed up my hair further and stuck my finger down my throat so I could vomit up a bit of fluid onto my sundress. Some snot carefully applied also added to the look. Additionally, I placed a glass of straight vodka near me and put a little Vaseline on the back of my hand. I forced myself to stay awake through the rest of the day and night to increase the appearance of weariness. When Jack came down the next morning, I quickly rubbed some of the Vaseline on my teeth to help keep my lips open in kind of a rictus grin. I also splashed a couple of drops of the remaining vodka in my eyes to create redness and tears. It hurt, but it was necessary. I could see he looked worlds better, even though he was still devastated. Even better was the clear concern in his face over my appearance. He still loved me. I had a shot. Jesus, Grace, you look horrible. Let's get you to bed. He picked me up and carried me to the main bedroom. I sobbed into his shoulder as he brought me into the room and laid me down. It was even better when he laid down next to me and started talking. You hurt me, Grace. You really shook the pillars of heaven. But I don't want you to hurt yourself. Mom called and said that they were taking care of Margot, so we need to talk. He looked uncomfortable, but he continued. I thought about this real hard. I mean harder than I ever thought in my life. I think I might be willing to give you another chance, but you need to get counseling on your problems. There is one more thing. Anything, love, I swear. Hush, he almost shouted. I guess he wasn't as over it as I thought. There is one more thing, Grace. You probably won't like it, but I need you to feel the soul-ripping pain you put me through. I can't tell you when it will happen, but sometime in the future I am going to sleep with another woman and film it. If you want this, us, to work going forward, you will have to watch me have sex with someone. We will be even then. I was shocked, for real. I had created a monster out of my loving spouse, and he was determined to savage me. The mere thought of him doing to another female what I did to my lovers was almost more than I could bear. But I needed him. I had to suffer through this for my life to get back to where it was. I just want you to know also that before we have sex again, you need to be tested for STDs. After I get my revenge at some point in the future, I will do the same. In the interim, assuming we do become intimate again, I will be wearing condom. With my trust issues right now, I can't put it past you to try and conceive another child to try and tie me to you further. I understand, Jack, my love. I don't want to feel the same pain, but I will to keep you. I'll suffer through anything for that. I thought it was a bit hammy, but you gotta do what you gotta do. We settled into an uneasy routine over the next few months. My demon child returned to a home where she couldn't understand why we weren't divorced. I simply smirked at her and reminded her that I ran this family. She didn't challenge me directly again after that. Counseling was a breeze as well. I simply blamed an addiction to sex. The doctor ate it up and regurgitated it to my hubby like he was a baby egret. The problem was, as I mentioned before, my husband went out of his way to screw me silly. He took control of the bedroom, right out of my grasp. I wondered every time he took me if he had learned his new passionate techniques from another woman. When we didn't have sex because he claimed to be ill or tired, I fretted. Was tomorrow the day I would get to see him ravishing some 304 and then possibly falling in love with her? The sum effect was devastating. I lost all of my confidence as the year progressed. I couldn't risk an outside liaison getting back to my husband, so I was reliant solely on him. I pined when he didn't show me attention. I lost weight and I wasn't fat to begin with. Even my hair lost its sheen and became brittle. People at work told me I looked like I had gone through a shock and aged 10 years. I couldn't sleep. My joints hurt. Maybe I was prematurely aging? Worst of all, I began to obsess over and really love my husband. I had nothing and he had everything. Every day I waited for my world to be ripped away from me and, like some evil priest from a movie, for my Jack to gleefully cackle and thrust his hand into my chest to tear out my still beating heart. My scheme had backfired worse than a winter attack on Russia. Who would have thought that the master schemer would fall into a trap of her own making? Finally, almost a year to the day, I could take it no longer. I decided to remove the plug and see what happened. I sent my daughter to her grandparents again and resolved to have it out with my loving husband. He needed to shit or get off the pot, or I was leaving. Even though I truly loved him, for the first time really, I could suffer no further. Jack, I can't take this anymore. I need you to hurry up and find this other woman, have sex with her, and let me watch the tape so we can get past this. He simply looked at me. I felt a cold, creeping sensation crawl across my body as I realized the look was the same as the one he gave me a year ago. The gaze an insect collector has when he sees a particularly interesting bug he wants to collect, or possibly the feverish glance of a young sociopath burning ants with a magnifying glass. What had I wrought in my actions? You really think I would stoop to your level, Gracie? He said in a cool voice. I noticed he used my full given name, something he never did as he preferred the moniker Grace. I never intended to do what I told you. All I did this past year was to destroy you. I wanted you to finally love me, so that when you could take no more of the worry and doubt, you would give me an ultimatum. He stood and went into his study. I heard the turn of a key in a lock, and he came back with a large envelope. You can sign these, or not, I don't care. We've come full circle, you and I. I no longer care one iota about you, and you love me with everything you have. I couldn't care if you became a crack hooker downtown and sold yourself to vagrants. While you don't want to deal with the worry of me sleeping with one woman for vengeance, you see, you now feel what I felt. You know what it feels like to wonder every day if the one you love is going to throw away that love and trust for a simple sex. When I went away to think, I never intended to resolve anything. I simply wanted to hurt you as deeply as I could without physically torturing you. I looked at the papers he handed me, divorce papers signed and dated just under 1 year ago. My tears blurred out the specifics, but they didn't really matter at this point. There was one chance, Gracie, one. If sometime during the year you came clean, quit trying to pass this off as some mental issue, and actually apologized, we might have reconciled. But you didn't. You prevaricated and tried to con your way out of it, like I suspected you would. I'm not stupid, Gracie. I've had my suspicions for a long time, and I'm fairly certain that Student wasn't your first outside man. I let it go because of our daughter, and because I loved you then as much as you love me now. In any case, we're done. Sign the papers if you like, but get your stuff and leave. Margot is staying with me. She is old enough to choose now, and that means I get to keep the house until she graduates. You make more than me, So good luck on getting alimony. Shoo now. Margot will be home soon and I don't want you here. I was Frankenstein, gazing upon his creature after it murdered his friend and wife. I doubted I would die of pneumonia anytime soon, but I was as dead inside as the creator of Mary Shelley's monster. He had planned all of this. I even had to wonder if his suspicions and plans had begun around the time he decided to become a trucker. It certainly offset the amount of money made between us and screwed up my chances to use alimony as a weapon to delay the divorce. He was also correct that my daughter was old enough to be heavily weighted as a factor in where she would reside custody-wise. Truthfully, the settlement was more than fair. With him making less money and most likely becoming the custody holder, I could have been forced to pay him alimony. I still could have taken it to court, tied everything up for months or years, but the sheer economic cost of having a lawyer for that long made it foolhardy. Since I had few options, I reluctantly signed the papers then and there, gathering a few things before I left. I would just have movers get the rest. They were only possessions, after all. What I really wanted I could no longer have. My sad tale should have ended there, but my daughter, having made it clear she was no longer afraid of me and that she never wished to see me again, uploaded my shameful acts from the cloud to a spicy site. The fallout from my amateur video was quicker than the lawsuit to have it removed for certain. I lost my vet job and had to seek employment in another state, where I could explain away my sudden dismissal. Someday I am sure that I will get over the pain, the hell of feeling like I am being cut to pieces. I'm still reasonably attractive, and even if I don't get over Jack, I could replace him. I'm just not sure what the use would be. I've already had a marriage that I went into not fully loving my spouse, and look at where that got me. I'm not as strong as Jack, for sure. Jack looked me square in the eye and told me to give him my best shot, that he could take it. I couldn't take his, that's for sure. As far as my current love life, I still have random hookups, but I am cold and dead inside emotionally. I still love a monster I created. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Cheated husband discovers wife's secret affairs, delivers cold revenge, and vanishes from her life. Tom was laboring over fresh test data, a tedious yet essential task for him and his team's month-long effort on the test vehicle. Despite its dullness, he found himself correlating and tabulating the information for analysis. Mid-task, his phone buzzed with a text notification, but he paid little attention to the sender's identity. Only after a pause in his work did he glance away from the screen and notice the alert. Curiosity piqued, he picked up his phone, revealing an unfamiliar number with a local area code. Though tempted to dismiss it as spam, he reconsidered, wondering if it might be a colleague's unregistered cell number. Upon opening the message, his initial confusion turned to shock as he found an explicit image displayed on his screen. It took a moment for him to process the unexpected content. A close-up of a woman's private parts, clearly showing a recent calculation. Reading the accompanying text, look closely. You still have time. Bradley's, 6 p.m. He initially dismissed it as a misdirected attempt at solicitation, finding a hint of amusement in the situation. However, a closer examination of the image revealed a tiny detail that froze him in disbelief. A mole near the woman's private parts, unmistakably belonging to his wife Tanya. Doubt flooded his mind as he desperately sought to disprove what he saw, but the evidence only strengthened his conviction. Questions raced through his mind as he recalled Tanya's supposed whereabouts, en route to Boston for a crucial work engagement. Yet, here he was, confronted with an image that suggested otherwise, with the clock ticking towards 5:15 p.m. The timing of the message clashed with Tanya's scheduled landing in Boston at 4:30 p.m. Although she typically checked in upon arrival, it seemed plausible that she was preoccupied with her team's arrangements. Despite the whirlwind of emotions, Tom opted to reply to the text first before considering further action. Not particularly original, but entirely expected. Who is this? How did you obtain this image? Am I expected to meet you at Bradley's? As he prepared to wrap up for the day, he made a firm decision to head to Bradley's. He was determined to get answers one way or another, sending a text to Tanya. How was your flight? I'm going out for a bite. Give me a call when available. He aimed to keep things low-key and gather information discreetly. Walking toward his car, his phone buzzed once more. Assuming it was Tanya, he checked his phone, only to find a response from the mystery sender. I'll be there, but I'm sure you'll find someone more interesting than me. Feeling overwhelmed, he hurried to his car while checking the map on his phone. Bradley's was 30 minutes away, and it was already 5:40. He'd arrive shortly after 6 p.m., uncertain of the importance of timing but hoping he wouldn't miss whoever the texter expected him to meet. During the ride, his phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Tanya, crazy time with the team. We'll call you later before bed. Love you. He pushed thoughts of their conversation aside. His focus was on his meeting at Bradley's and the mystery surrounding the texter's knowledge of his wife. Arriving at 6:12, his heart raced as he parked. Since the texter hadn't provided any clues about who to look for, he assumed whoever wanted to meet knew him and would approach him. Yet it was the mention of someone more interesting being present that troubled him most. The texter seemed privy to information he didn't possess, and he feared walking into a trap. Without any other means of uncovering the truth, the image of his wife's carnal parts left him in turmoil. He trusted her completely, and their closeness was satisfying, or so he thought. But the only explanation for someone possessing such an image was troubling. And he was minutes away from discovering the truth, a prospect that filled him with dread. Stepping inside, he allowed his eyes to adjust to the dim lighting. Unfamiliar with the pub's layout, he paused by the entrance to survey the surroundings. A spacious dining area lay ahead, with a bar to his left. Choosing a seat near the end of the bar, he ordered a draft and scanned the dining area. His attention was drawn to a man who had just taken his drink order and was making his way across the room toward a table of smiling individuals. And there, at the table, receiving a drink from the well-dressed man, sat Tanya, adorned in her little black dress and pearls, her smile radiant. He moved mechanically, advancing toward the table where Tanya sat. Just a couple of steps away, her expression shifted from a warm smile to wide-eyed fear upon seeing him. Undeterred, Tom continued, reaching the table and seizing a handful of the well-dressed man's hair with his left hand. He yanked back forcefully, causing the man to drop his drinks and stumble backward, yelping in pain as Tom pulled him past. He released his grip, intending to strike him with his right hand, but the man's rapid retreat left Tom out of range, and he landed on the floor. Before Tom could act further, taking a step toward him, Tom recognized Pete and sternly warned him to stay down. Pete, disheveled and soaked in drink, obeyed without uttering a word. Turning back to Tanya, Tom noticed the table had fallen silent. Familiar faces stared back at him, members of Tanya's team, who had shared meals and gatherings at his home. He mused that team loyalty outweighed betrayal, except for one individual who had chosen to reveal the truth. Briefly considering identifying them, he dismissed the idea as futile. Tom informed Tanya that he was going home and suggested that if there was any hope for their marriage, she should come with him now. Tanya nodded in response, however. Before she could rise, he gestured for her to wait and requested a moment before departing. He addressed Betty Wilson and Bob Thoron, seated nearby. He asked Betty if Bill thought she was in Boston, and Bob if Alice believed the same. Their avoidance confirmed his suspicions. He pondered whether the whole team was involved, realizing that at least one of them was. The drive home was a blur, ending abruptly in his driveway. Inside, he grabbed a beer and sank into the living room, contemplating his acquaintances, familiar with Bill Wilson and Alice Thoron, but unfamiliar with the other couples present. With uncertainty gnawing at him, he debated contacting Bob or Alice but ultimately decided against it. Instead, he sent them a brief message. Just heard Tanya's travel plans changed. Might want to touch base with that. He left the choice of further investigation in their hands, feeling a sense of closure amidst the chaos. It was roughly 20 minutes later when he heard the garage door open and Tanya pull into the garage. He waited in the living room. She entered, still dressed in her LBD, but without the provocative pumps and jewelry. As she calmly walked into the living room and took a seat opposite him on the sofa, he remained quiet. Understanding the power of silence in any conversation, he was resolute in allowing the silence to persist for as long as necessary. It didn't take Tanya long to speak up. "It's not what you think," she began, but he gestured for her to stop. "You have no clue what I think about tonight's events," Tom replied. "I don't need a detailed explanation. We're both engineers, and we know that there's no real or objective answer to any why question. It's often just an attempt to justify unfavorable outcomes, so I won't ask why. Let's start with something simpler. How long? How many times? How frequently? Do our friends know? Apart from those at the table who cheat, am I labeled as your betrayed man among your work colleagues and our friends?" "No, Tom, it's not like that at all," Tanya protested. "Our team's travel plans got disrupted, and instead of coming home only to travel again tomorrow, Pete suggested we stay in town for a down day before resuming. I didn't see the whole team there." "Where was everyone else?" Tom inquired. "When we received the news, some of the team chose to stay home one more night and meet us at the airport tomorrow," she admitted. "But you chose to deceive me," he pointed out. "You seemed rather close to Pete. Is there anything happening between the star engineer and the wandering program manager that you'd like to tell me?" "Well, for one, Pete's all right, and he persuaded the owners at Bradley's not to press charges," she said in a positive tone. His eyes widened in utter disbelief at her loyalty. I couldn't care less about your colleague. If he hadn't tripped, I would have punched him. Whether charges are pressed doesn't faze me. I've spent a night in jail before. It's irrelevant. Besides, it could make for interesting testimony, he added with a half-smile. Do you love him? Tanya paused, gathering her thoughts. He could tell she was contemplating. Yes, silence was indeed a powerful tool, and his mind raced to fill the void in their conversation. Again, this didn't seem like it would end well. He's not my boyfriend. There's absolutely nothing between us. Yes, I should have informed you about the change in plans, but it seemed trivial. Whether I was in town or Boston, you weren't expecting me, and I was still committed to the team. We were simply having dinner before retiring to our rooms. There was no reason for you to act the way you did. You completely embarrassed me in front of my team, she exclaimed, attempting to bluff her way out of the situation. He unlocked his phone, pulled up the text, and pushed it across the coffee table to her. Judging by her expression, he could tell she recalled the picture and the situation, leaving no room for denial this time. She started speaking, without bravado. He retrieved the phone, started a voice recording app, and tucked it into his shirt pocket. Tom, our team is... She hesitated, searching for words, very close-knit in many ways. Most of us, she began. We have a small group that meets regularly. They were all at Bradley's. We were the ones putting in extra effort for the proposal. You know the time I've spent preparing our pitch. I don't know exactly when it began. It was sometime after Pete became PM. We worked closely together, and I was drawn to him, and things just evolved, Tanya explained. No explanations needed, he interrupted. Falling into bed doesn't just happen. Decisions are made consciously. We both understand that, so please don't insult me. So, almost 6 months. He answered one of his questions. That's when Pete joined, right? She nodded. The team, he continued, all of you. He trailed off without naming it. I mean collectively. She nodded again. Pete mentioned it fosters trust and team unity. Is that what convinced all of you to form a coalition group? Now you're being crude. It's more than that. I feel a strong connection to Pete and my team more than ever, Tanya asserted confidently. He sensed trouble brewing. Unfortunately, you may see some changes in your team soon, Tom warned. What did you do? Tanya gasped. Tom, involving others will only cause more damage. Let them make their own choices. We need to focus on us, Tanya. I can't stay silent and be complicit. I care about Bob and Alice. In fact, I like them a lot more than Betty and Bill right now, he replied. I texted them about the changed plans. How they handle it with their spouses is up to them. I can live with my decision. Tom, we have the most productive team in CR Inc.'s history, she practically yelled at him, and you benefited too, just because our team meetings were on. Wednesdays didn't mean you missed out. I never denied you access to me whenever you needed it, so I slept with my team a bit earlier. You never noticed. That picture you showed me, you want to know about it? She sneered. That was right after Pete finished inside me. Yes. He came inside your loving wife. What you don't see is Betty. She took the picture just before she went down on me. So now you know you never had seconds or tasted another man's seed. If you don't know, it didn't happen, right? Tom listened in shock as the extent of the deception and his own ignorance unfolded before him. Now, just because you're aware, just because your fragile ego is bruised, you want to throw away all that my team and I have achieved? Tanya hissed, her anger escalating. Tom could feel his heart rate rising as Tanya passionately defended her team's questionable dynamic. His own anger was growing by the second. For a fleeting moment during his drive home from Bradley's, he entertained the idea that perhaps forgiving Pete just this once could be possible. However, that notion had quickly met its demise. He didn't need to hear anymore, and he certainly didn't want to. But Tanya persisted. No, sir, we won't let you off the hook. You're going to text Bob and Alice back, informing them that you heard from me and that we were stranded in Atlanta but have reservations for the morning. That's the story Betty and Bill will stick to, and you're going to support them, damn it, she shouted. There are millions on the line with this deal, and your hurt feelings mean absolutely nothing. Send the text, and then we can discuss our next steps. Discuss our next steps, Tom retorted. There's no discussing it. You're leaving now. You and your twisted team, including your ringleader Pete, can carry on however you like. We're finished. I'll be contacting a lawyer this week to get the ball rolling. It's a straightforward 50-50th split. You keep your retirement and I'll keep mine, Tom declared. But go. You have reservations in town. Use them. Head off to Boston and chalk up another victory for you and your team. Tom, please, send those texts, Tanya pleaded, her tone much softer now. If we lose Betty or Bill before the presentation, the company could lose millions. You and I could miss out on tens, maybe hundreds of thousands in commissions and bonuses. Just imagine all the places we could go with that money, just you and me. Forget about this and reclaim my loyalty. Please, Tom, don't let some irrational concern about meaningless encounters derail us. Pete says I'm on the fast track to executive status. All I have to do is keep delivering results for a few more years. Don't you want that for me, for us? She implored. Tanya, just leave, Tom managed to say before he was struck hard in the back, knocking the wind out of him as he fell to the floor with a knee pressed into his back. Don't hurt him, Tanya interjected. Too much, she added. Still undecided about breaking my nose? Pete taunted as he leaned in close to Tom's face while Tom lay pinned on the floor. Tanya must have a bug, Tom thought. Now I know whose team she's really on. We'll see whose nose gets broken, Pete smirked. Get his damn phone and type those damn texts for him. We don't have time for this nonsense. Someone pulled him up from the floor, just one individual. He pretended to be injured, causing the person behind him to exert significant force to assist him to stand. This provided him with necessary information. His captor was a weak office worker, wheezing from the effort to get Tom on his feet. Tom was catching his breath after being taken by surprise and was refocusing on the situation. In contrast to Pete and his team of well-groomed salespeople, Tom's team operated in the field with the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment SOAR based in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Although his group of engineers didn't match their caliber, spending time with the crews during test missions led to the team being invited to improve their physical condition under the guidance of seasoned workers flown to missions and aircraft modified by Tom's team. If these men appeared at your doorstep, it meant the end of your days on Earth. Tom and his team designed the equipment necessary to access, and more importantly, exit hazardous locations. They took pride in their modifications, contributing to successful missions and the safe return of all involved. The members of the 160th and their formidable passengers deeply appreciated the hard work put in by Tom's crew, with Master Sergeant Troy Baker standing out as the most intimidating figure. MSGT Baker was renowned within his community. Everyone, from recruits to high-ranking officers, showed him the respect he deserved for guiding his men through missions worldwide. He was known for never leaving anyone behind. This reputation was solidified during a mission in Colombia. MSGT Baker had instructed the young LT platoon leader to stick close during their first mission. When the FARC ambushed their group, MSGT Baker thought the LT was performing well for a rookie, until he saw him on the ground, bleeding from a head wound. The medic reported that he had checked for vitals and mentioned that he was gone. Top Baker knelt down and lifted him into a fireman's carry, with the medic reiterating that he was gone. Top Baker responded to the medic's observation, stating that it might be true, but he was still coming home with them. The medic looked at him as if he had lost his mind, considering the more than 5 kilometers trek back to the LZ through dense forest. They would be fortunate to return unscathed, but carrying a deceased individual seemed like a risky decision. Anticipating the medic's thoughts, Baker assured him, "I'd do the same for you, Billy. Stay close in case I need you." What ensued became legendary. Upon their return to the base, the medic informed the doctor that the lieutenant had succumbed. The doctor nodded and retrieved a penlight from his pocket. The medic watched in amazement as the dead lieutenant's pupils contracted in the harsh beam of the penlight. The doc then asked the medic if he cared to revise his diagnosis. As they hurried the revived lieutenant into surgery, he was timeless. He didn't speak much, but when he did, everyone listened. He was a relic in an age of convenience and disposability. He was neither. He was meticulously crafted and unique, and he seemed to hold a special regard for Tom and his team. During the extended periods of downtime between missions, the MSGT expressed his gratitude by instructing Tom and the team in some basic yet effective hand-to-hand defensive techniques. He advised the engineers, "It's better to know something just in case. I understand the biggest threat you're likely to encounter is a malfunctioning copier or a nasty paper cut, but if you remain in this line of work, you may find yourself in some colorful locations. So now, if you happen to encounter one of the local colorful inhabitants, you'll have something practical to rely on," MSGT Baker explained to the group. "But let's hope a paper cut remains the scariest thing you ever have to face." Tom regulated his breathing and allowed himself to appear subdued in the grasp of his captor while recalling the fighting techniques taught by the MSGT. There might be situations where you feel powerless and can only endure the smacking. It's unfortunate, but it happens. The key is to remember that even when you're taking a smacking, you can still fight back. You just have to outsmart your attacker. Tom remembered the lesson and subtly resisted, gradually wearing down the lone man's strength. "Give me the phone, Tom," Pete demanded, staring him down. "Now you know I've been with your wife. and that every guy on the team has had their way with her. Forget this tough guy act, Tom. You're nothing but a weak, submissive nerd. Do as we say, and maybe you'll still have a chance with Tanya when the team isn't using her. Don't forget about all the luxuries you can afford with her bonus. That should ease the pain. Who knows? Maybe Tanya will even buy you a Keyshawn robot for those times when she's busy. Tom bit his tongue as Pete took pleasure in humiliating him and coercing him into compliance. Pete demanded to know where the phone was. Spotting the outline of the phone in Tom's shirt pocket, Pete reached for it with his right hand. Tom forcefully stepped back, driving his right heel into his captor's shin, causing him to stumble in pain. Flexing his arms, Tom broke free from the hold as his captor yelped and collapsed under his own weight. Pete's eyes widened in recognition. With his right arm extended straight out, Tom rolled his shoulder as taught by the MSGT, driving his clenched fist into the center of Pete's face with full force. He felt bones shatter beneath his fist as a gush of blood poured from Pete's nose, sending him crashing to the floor. Tom turned around to identify his assailant. It was Bill, lying on the floor in tears, clutching his leg. He whimpered that he thought his foot was broken. Tom forcefully stomped on Bill's foot, causing him to scream in agony. Tom remarked, "That should clear up any uncertainty." Turning his attention back, he saw Pete on the floor, hands covering his face, attempting to rise to his knees. Approaching him, Tom leaned in close to Pete's ear and mentioned, "Looks like your nose took the punch. Guess you weren't willing to take one for the team." He then delivered a powerful punch to Pete's temple, knocking him out cold. Adrenaline pumping and breath ragged, Tom scanned the living room for Tanya. Suddenly, he felt a sharp impact to his back and neck, dropping to one knee. He spun around to confront the new attacker. Tanya stood before him, wielding a cast-iron skillet. Her swing had missed, grazing Tom's side. Rising to his feet, he roughly grabbed the pan from her hand. Tanya pleaded with Tom, expressing that they could still salvage the situation. She asked him to consider the money he would be giving up and promised to put an end to the extramarital affairs, vowing to cut them off. She suggested going back to how things were between them. Rubbing the back of his head with his left hand, Tom stared at her, astonished by her sudden transformation. He compared her to the shape-shifting alien in John Carpenter's The Thing, adapting to each new challenge. He smirked at the thought. Misinterpreting his smile as agreement, Tanya moved to embrace Tom. He held her back with his left hand, then, after a brief moment of consideration, swiftly struck her nose with his right hand, fracturing bone but not rendering her unconscious. Tanya cried out and slumped to the floor. Tom remarked, "Hurts like hell, doesn't it?" Tears streaming, vision blurred, breathing labored, and blood everywhere. "Works every time." Tanya, expressing her distress, questioned Tom's motive for punching her. Tom, unapologetic, explained that he struck her because he had the ability to do so. He continued recording the incident, convinced that he had enough evidence to justify his actions, despite the potential negative portrayal. Reflecting on the advice received from the MSGT about decisive action, Tom surveyed the room, noting Bill's distressed state and Tanya's attempts to stem the bleeding from her nose. While others remained still, Tom acknowledged the success of saving someone, giving credit to the MSGT. Discussing the aftermath, Tom expressed frustration about the consequences for Loverboy and Mr. Bill, lamenting the missed opportunities and potential financial losses. He contemplated the implications of involving the police, deciding to delay the call to maintain his chance to question Tanya. Kneeling beside her, Tom demonstrated how to address her nosebleed, but as the adrenaline subsided, he felt a sudden loss of energy. Sitting across from the woman he thought he knew, questioning her actions, Tom wondered about the true extent of Tanya's deception. Expressing disappointment in the betrayal, he inquired about her aspirations, specifically regarding her ambition to become a vice president. Tanya admitted that it could have been worthwhile if Tom had gone along with her plans, expressing regret for the setback caused by the incident. Tom pressed further, questioning the future of their relationship and the persistence of deceit, to which Tanya acknowledged the possibility and the potential continuation of dishonesty. Tom discovered from Tanya that Pete had warned her about his rigid ethics and idealistic views, advising her to break free from his influence to achieve success. In response to Tom's question about when Pete conveyed this advice, Tanya retorted, insinuating Tom's lack of knowledge about certain aspects of her relationship with Pete. Despite Tom's silence, Tanya continued sharing her perspective on career advancement. She revealed that adhering to Tom's suggestions for career enhancement yielded only a few commendations. And it wasn't until Betty offered guidance that she learned what truly worked for women in the workplace. Tanya asserted that engaging in carnal relationships for career advancement was not only effective, but also more enjoyable. Tom, still recording the conversation, processed this information. Curious about the timeline of Tanya's actions, Tom inquired if her involvement in such activities began before Pete entered the picture. Tanya, expressing impatience with his comprehension, disclosed that she initiated such actions at the company's Christmas party a year after joining CR, emphasizing her commitment to this approach ever since. "Wait, you're sleeping with the boss too, Art? Art Vanderlei?" Tom asked incredulously. "Yes, Tom. Art, Pete, Bill, anyone on the team who could help advance my career. It doesn't cost me anything to share some closeness, and it's easy to manipulate you men when I can lead you around by your desires. Especially you. Show a bit of cleavage and I could guide you wherever I needed," she stated. "Even now, thinking you have it all figured out, we informed Art of our location when we headed here. Right now, he's gathering the rest of the team, crafting a cover story for our absence. They'll have to make the pitch without us, but the extra effort with their purchasing managers should pay off." "Do I really want to hear this?" he wondered. "Oh, what the heck, why not?" "Extra effort?" Tom prodded. "You always were a go-getter, Tanya." "It was so easy, I hate to even call it effort," she laughed. "What's the old joke? The worst sex I ever had was great." At the BITS conference, it was straightforward with the men. We had to get a bit more creative with Brenda, the token woman on the selection board. It's funny, I can even seduce a woman. But I did throw in old Pete over there as the kicker. She was situationally bi-curious, as I recall. Her situation cleared up about the same time my tongue began lapping at her, with promises of more to come when we started working together after the contract award. "Yeah, we have the selection board covered." "Why all this then? I mean, if it's all set up, why the strong-arm tactics?" Tom asked. "That was Pete's idea, the idiot. I told him to cool off, that I would come home and please you, and be back in time to catch the flight. But he had to go all alpha. Look what that got us. So now, instead of being the face of the winning team, I'm back to dealing with Art. Like I said, fixable, but it will set me back." "You wouldn't have bought me so cheap," he said. "Maybe not," Tanya replied, "but I still would have made the flight." "Well, you sure as hell ain't making that flight now," he declared. Remembering how Pete seemed so clued in, he figured Tanya must have a transmitter. "Art, are you listening? I'm about to call the cops. I'm sure there's a handful of felonies involved here, and we haven't even begun to go down the rabbit trail of fraud." "That's a federal contract, isn't it, Tanya?" Tom asked rhetorically. "Yeah, the feds take a dim view of—" "How did you phrase it?" "Extra effort. I'm sure you have great lawyers and all, Art, but maybe there's an alternative." He let it hang for a moment. Then, Tanya's cell phone ringtone played hail to the chief. "Art?" she asked into the phone. "Of course. I'll put you on speaker." Art's voice came through the speaker. "First, let me apologize to you, Tom. Pete's actions were a gross lapse of judgment. I can assure you the board will deal with him assertively." "Thank you, Art. That eases my mind. Glad to see that you and the board take assault and fraud seriously. Tom, these are all unfortunate allegations. Lawyers will profit, but nobody wants to rock the boat. We might pay a fine, Pete and Bill get community service, but ultimately, you'll be divorced and half as wealthy," Art explained in a businesslike manner. "Do I detect an or in this story, Art?" Tom inquired. "Tanya always said you were the cleverer of the two." "Still, I'm happier to have hired Tanya." "Yes, Tom, there most decidedly is an or," Art continued. "Tom, we at CR have displaced you in your wife's affections, and when you found out and questioned it, you were treated most shabbily." "Shocking," Tom chimed in sarcastically. "Tom," Art continued, "instead of calling the cops as you put it, suppose we could come to an agreement?" "I just sent a snap to Tanya's phone. Not me, one of my tech boys here. They tell me they disappear after viewing. Have a peek, perhaps that might restore some goodwill." Tanya opened the snap and turned the phone to Tom. He saw the words Bank of Grand Cayman and a number, a very large number. "And when would that be deposited?" Tom asked. "It's already there, Tom. You have an email with the account number." "This has been a very bad day for you, Tom. This may be a hard decision for you to make, and I don't discount the emotion. Tanya is a very desirable woman. Be that as it may, however, one can't take emotion to the bank, can one?" "One can't," Tom agreed, affecting Art's upper-crust clipped manner of speech. "CR will cover the costs of your divorce. You can never reconcile, I think we all recognize that. Tanya will file. She will ask for her personal belongings and her retirement." He thought for a moment before replying. On the one hand, he could stand on principle and expose the whole sordid mess and let the chips fall. On the other hand, he could just walk away. Art had just given him 5 million reasons to do just that. Does CR have a medical staff, Art? Tom asked. Ah, yes, Tom, I believe we have some physicians on retainer, Art replied. Good, Tom said. You better load a few into a limo and send them over here to pick up your team. Are we in agreement then, Art? Tonyo, Tom replied. Precisely, Art agreed. Are we done, Tom? Art asked. Goodbye, Art, Tom said, and ended the call. Tom put his phone away, turned off the recording app, and slipped it back into his pocket. I knew you would see it our way, Tom. We can still be friends. Friends with benefits when this is all over. She summoned up what she thought was her most winning smile. But even her incandescent smile couldn't reverse the effects of her ruined nose. Her eyes were turning black, and the blood was crusted under her nose, dried drips down to her chin. Tom found the sight comical and allowed himself a smile. Once again, Tanya misread his smile for agreement and leaned in to kiss him. Tom extended his right hand to halt Tanya, using it to gently push her back until she landed on the couch with a thud. Expressing disdain, he questioned the notion of wanting to kiss her, leaving Tanya hurt and looking up at him. Declaring his decision, Tom insisted that she remove whatever she wanted by the next day. Walking toward the door, he stopped beside Bill, inquiring about his injured foot. Dismissive of Bill's complaints, Tom kicked him in the groin, causing Bill to curl up and moan. Approaching Pete, who had managed to sit up, Tom assured him he wouldn't physically damage him. Pete, relieved, smiled, but it quickly vanished when Tom's foot applied pressure to Pete's groin. Rolling onto his side in pain, Pete watched as Tom exited the room. He got into his car, unsure where he was going, but food and shelter were high on the hierarchy of needs scale for a good reason. He grabbed a burger from a takeout place, checked into a Red Roof Inn just outside of town near the freeway, and fell asleep as soon as his head hit the pillow. Despite enduring numerous physical strains from various injuries, he rose. Early the following morning and reluctantly got out of bed. While preparing motel room coffee, his phone chimed, and he eagerly grabbed it. The text message came from the number, and he opened it promptly. Sorry for yesterday. I can meet, thank God it's Friday at the mall. Nish, I'll wave you over to seats at the bar. I'll be there, he replied, and poured the lukewarm brown water from the coffee maker carafe into the paper cup. With determination, he set up his laptop, gearing up for some online banking, reflecting on his college days, a time predating his relationship with Tanya. Tom recalled his economics professor's advice to maintain an offshore account for unforeseen circumstances. With his professor's assistance, he had established a bank account in the Cayman Islands, which he fondly referred to as his go-to-hell fund. Over the past decade, he diligently contributed to it, and now he boasted an impressive sum of close to $50,000. Tom felt a sense of pride, knowing that his go-to-hell fund was about to receive a significant boost. Tom accessed the secure website for each bank. With his passcode and several keystrokes, he transferred the bulk of CR's payment into his personal account, leaving $100,000 in the original account. After a shower, a change, and getting ready, he headed out to meet the mystery texter. Tom entered Thank God It's Friday just past noon. As he entered, he noticed a man waving him over. The man appeared to be about Tom's age, well-dressed and handsome. Tom approached him. I believe you sent me a text, Tom said as he sat down. I'm sorry for how it turned out. I don't know if there was any clean way to tell you, the stranger began. Why don't you start with who you are and your connection to Tanya, Tom replied. I was on the team. I left the Army after 8 years, wounded in action, and had a lengthy recovery before being medically discharged. I joined CR about 6 months ago and was assigned to Pete's team around 3 months ago. While talking to a friend about the job, I mentioned working for Tanya. When he asked for her full name, we realized we had a mutual friend, and he asked me to watch out for Tanya as a favor. At first, everything was great. I was warmly welcomed to the team. It didn't take long to find out why, he started. About 2 months in, Tanya approached me. She's extremely attractive and compelling, but when I asked her about her ring, she just smiled and told me you were okay with it. I wasn't, and said so. That started the deep freeze. After I turned her down, I got all the undesirable assignments and nothing but grief from Pete. I called our mutual friend back and told him about Tanya approaching me. He told me about you and thought that pimping your wife for pay seemed out of character for the man he knew. He believed there was more to it than Tanya let on, and that you needed to know. Pete sent me the pic when they were trying to get me on board with the team, kind of a prize I could expect if I went along. Let's just say I don't agree with their methods. I resigned yesterday and sent you the text. Our friend? Tom asked. Troy Baker. If I hadn't met Troy, he replied, then paused a moment before continuing. Let's just say he helped me out of a scrape when I was a green lieutenant. I owe him a favor or two. Don't we both? Tom agreed. What are you going to do? Art pretty much laid it all out for me. I could get the cops involved, and yes, Bill, Pete, and even Tanya would face legal problems. But with his lawyers, it would all end up as a bump in the road. We made a deal. You might think I'm selling out, and maybe you're right in a way. But they stole the only thing I had that was irreplaceable. If I can't make them pay legally, well, at least I can make them pay. It won't bring Tanya back, but I think I may find she's less irreplaceable than I thought. I have a trip planned. Tell Troy thanks for everything. I won't be going back to work. What about you? Tom asked finally. Well, Troy always spoke highly of Baxter Inc. Now that you're gone, they might just need another engineer. I think you'll find they do business a bit differently at Baxter, maybe more to your liking. Challenging, but the fringe benefits won't compare to what Tanya's team was offering. Tom smiled, expressing his acceptance of the arrangement. The stranger stood up, prompting Tom to do the same. With a simple nod to each other, they left without exchanging any further words. Fast forward to Monday, Tom had just completed the check-in process for his flight to Costa Rica. As he contemplated the upcoming relaxation in Tamarindo, he headed toward security. Spotting a mailbox, he pulled out an envelope from his pocket, addressed to the DOJ in Washington, D.C., containing a thumb drive with a recording. He thought it might pique their interest, considering the possibility that Art's legal team might not be as formidable as assumed. Tom dropped the envelope into the box before proceeding into the security line. Update 9 months later, seated at his usual table in the cafe, Tom received mail from Anna, who brought him his cerveza. "Thank you, dear," he said, raising the bottle to his lips. Holding the envelope, he wondered who had found him. Not going to great lengths to stay hidden, finding him in a little town on the Pacific coast of northern Costa Rica would have required resources beyond the ordinary guy's reach. His first thought was that Art's people had found him. Letting the envelope sit at his house for 2 days, he was fairly certain it wasn't a bomb, yet. You can't be too careful. "Carlos," Tom called out to the cafe owner. "Toselo si, Senor Tom?" Tom handed over the envelope and stepped back a few paces. Can never be too careful, he thought as Carlos cut open the envelope. He handed it to Tom, who thanked him, took another pull from his beer bottle, and turned the envelope over. Several sheets of paper fell onto the table. Picking up a note that said, "Thought you would find this interesting," along with a phone number, the number Tom thought Troy would have the resources to find him. "I can live with that." Flipping the other piece of paper over, he found a copy of a newspaper article with a picture. The photo depicted Pete, Bill, Tanya, and Betty being led out of the CR building in handcuffs. The headline for the article read, "4 indicted in multi-million-dollar procurement fraud." He smiled. Maybe Art's lawyers aren't everything he thought they were, he said to himself, a habit he picked up since his Spanish was weak and English wasn't widely spoken. He liked to hear English conversation, even if it was just him talking to himself. "Ana, otra cerveza," he said, holding up his empty bottle. "Sí, mister." "Gracias," Anna said as she accepted his beer. Tom took a swallow and looked out at the deep blue Pacific. Tanya, who?
I caught my wife cheating on me with her assistant. It actually got me promoted, but she had to suffer a lot. Got my revenge. My wife, I'll call her Sarah, and I worked for a pretty big not-for-profit in Western Canada. This particular organization is in the public eye and has a lot to do with politicians, and for the last 8 or so years, our organization has been trying to get a certain agreement signed and recognized by the federal government. Anyways, without getting too into the details of that, my wife's position meant that she was constantly on the news and working with big wigs and traveling the country and kissing people's butts. I guess literally and figuratively now. I found out she was cheating on me with her assistant that she hired about 6 months ago. She was in the Department of Stairs and me in the registration department. We actually met at the organization 8 years ago. We both started within a few months. We both worked our butts off to get into the positions that we're in now. It wasn't easy, and obviously, like I said, she kisses butts and she's super charismatic and has a way with words. When she speaks, people listen. When she walks into a room, she demands people's attention. I'm a little more introverted, and for the years, that really worked for us. Well, I ended up having some health troubles and had to go on a short-term disability, so I wasn't at work for a little bit, and this is sort of when it all started, or at least when I figured something was up. Some things to note: I'm almost positive that her assistant didn't know we were married. I'm sure of this because he would look at me strange when I brought her lunch or brought her coffee in the mornings. He looked at me as if like, "Who the heck are you?" He knew who I was and that I worked in the building, but I'm not sure that Sarah ever told him who I was to her. I mean, it's not like we went around the building saying, "Hey, we're married." But like the people who work there, No one gossip travels fast around the organization because people like drama and like starting drama, which is why I ended up finding out that things were going on. A little background info. Sarah is 45 and I'm 43. It turns out that we actually went to the same high school, but it was a bigger school, so our paths never crossed. We have 2 kids. We have a son who's 7 and a daughter who's 5. They literally are the loves of my life, and I truly believe my life didn't start until they arrived. We hit it off right away, and at the time it was a big deal that we started seeing each other at work because it was against office policy to date anyone that you worked with. Technically, Sarah and I never really worked together because we dealt with such different issues. But when we had company-wide meetings, obviously we'd see each other there, and sometimes the projects I was working on would overlap with what she was dealing with upstairs. Eventually, people just let it slide, and it just became another thing. And like I said, we never screamed it off the rooftops and nobody seemed to mind. Not only that, but when you work in an office, people get kind of crazy. People flirt with everybody, and my wife is attractive. I will say that, and I constantly heard it from other people, and I even heard it from a lot of the female staff. People in an office space get kind of horny. It's sort of pathetic in a way. So her assistant, I'll call him Trevor, he's 29. He has a political science degree. I'll admit it. He's a good-looking guy. And there was only about 12 men in the whole building compared to like 40 or so women. So we were outnumbered. And when Trevor started, these single ladies literally pounced at him. From the start, it seemed like Sarah could have cared less. She seemed all business. She didn't even bring him up to me, really. I knew that she was hiring an assistant, but I didn't know that she hired a male. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But when I saw him and saw how good-looking he was, I sort of understood why she didn't say anything. And at one point, she even said that he reminded her of me, but a younger version of me. And in another time, she said that Trevor was the version of me if I didn't get in my own head. And I took a different career path. I was sort of offended by that. How am I supposed to take that? When I found out that she hired him and didn't tell me for a few weeks, I asked her why. She said, "Why is it such a big deal?" And then she laughed in my face, and she said that I felt threatened by a little boy. I'm like, threatened? And she's like, "Yeah, you're jealous." And yeah, I guess I was in some way. And yeah, maybe I was threatened. But I tried to argue to her that her omitting the fact that he was a guy and was good-looking sort of made a point. And she said I was being ridiculous because I wouldn't have had the same reaction if it was a good-looking woman. And I was like, yeah, okay, true. But would she still have slept with him and made comments that he reminded her of a young me if it was a woman? No, not only that, but I heard our secretary asking her questions about Trevor, and they'd both be giggling, another red flag. Yeah, okay, I was jealous, but who wouldn't be? Not only that, but I wasn't feeling well physically, so it was really eating away at me. I wasn't feeling my best. I wasn't my best, and I knew it, and I feel like Sarah really took advantage of that. So yeah, I go on short-term disability, and this means I'm at home for a couple of weeks. I become the main caregiver for my kids, and Sarah starts to work really long hours and goes away on trips. So when she was on these trips, she took this assistant with her, and then she's posting pictures on Instagram of herself in clothes that aren't really professional, or like on the beach, and I can tell that she has no bikini top on. The photo is just of her, but I know that he's with her. I comment on the photo and I'm like, scandalous, but she doesn't react to it or anything. Then I creep Trevor's page. He's got a public page and see that he's in fact posting photos of the same beach, but it's of the water. But then I know that they're together, and I know that my wife is laying on the beach next to him without a bikini top on. I text her and I'm like, should you be posting photos of like that on Instagram? And she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, you're not wearing a shirt and you're showing a lot of skin. Do you think that's smart to be doing when you have a position that you do? People look up to you. And then we got in a huge fight, and she didn't talk to me for the rest of her work trip. And I say that lightly, work trip. She was sleeping with him at this point. And another note, yeah, these work trips took her all over the country, and she get time for business and pleasure that disgust me now. But I'm trying to just get through this with self-deprecating humor because that's the only way I'm surviving right now. But yeah, she'd have free time when on these trips. This particular trip was on Kelowna, British Columbia. So it was nice weather, and she knew she'd have some time for the beach apparently. While she was there, I was taking care of the kids. I don't mind this at all. But what I did mind was the fact that she was having relations with someone other than me, her husband. It's embarrassing because everyone in the office knew this. They'd stay at work late together. They'd constantly be in meetings with a closed door and closed windowed blinds. But she tried to argue that she was having meetings about confidential things. Oh yeah, confidential, all right. A woman at work who didn't actually like her very much, Angela, ended up telling me recently that she heard moans and slurps and all kinds of atrocious sounds coming from that room. Angela and Sarah shared an office wall. And the thing about this office building is that it was gifted to us and it didn't have as many offices in the building originally. When the organization started, we literally didn't have any money. So we had to just make do and throw up walls. Some of the office walls in this place are paper thin and weren't meant to be permanent. And if Angela would have told me about these noises she heard back then, I would have just thought that she's saying this to complain about Sarah because she doesn't like her. But after it all came out and I caught them red-handed, I don't doubt her for a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. So she's spending a lot of late nights there. And there's whispers going on about how close they're getting and whatnot. I'm in total denial. I can't believe she'd ever do anything like that to me. She posts more pictures on her Instagram, and it looks like someone is taking these photos of her. These photos look like they're in really intimate restaurants, dark, candlelit places. When she comes home after going out like this, she claims they're business meetings. And I sort of say they look like really intimate business meetings. And with my particular sickness at the time, I was having a hard time and she never, not once, asked how I was doing. She was always too busy working, and I can't remember the last time she was home to say goodnight to our kids. Even our kids were asking, "Where's Mommy? When's Mommy going to be home? I miss Mommy." It broke my dang heart. And what do I tell them? Oh, Mommy's working. Mommy's trying to help her citizens. Nope. Mommy's just cheating on Daddy and throwing her family away. Anyways, one particular evening I get a text from a number I didn't recognize and it was like, "Get to work right now. You're going to want to see this. Don't call your wife. Don't let her know you're on your way. But head for your office." And like weird, I tried calling the number, but it just disconnected. So I call my mom to come over to be at the house because my kids were sleeping and I didn't want them to wake up to go. So she comes over and asks if everything is okay. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I just have to go help Sarah with something." So I go and park down the road so she can't see my car in the parking lot. I sneak into the side door with my key card. The lights are off in the building, but when I go upstairs, I can see that the lights in her side of the building are still on. It's long after everyone has gone home for the day. Too long after, in fact. And then I walk slowly up to her office. The door is open, and I see Trevor just giving it to her on the desk. She's been over, and she looks up and sees me. I'm just standing there. She has to hit Trevor to stop. And then she quickly pulls her skirt back down, and he quickly zips up his pants. And all I could say is, "Wow, Sarah." And it's the same old story. She tries to tell me that she can explain everything. It's not what I thought. And then I'm trying to walk away, and she's pulling at my arm, and I'm trying to brush her off. Trevor doesn't come out of her office, but I'm trying to make my way down the stairs and back out the side door. She's following me, and then suddenly she switches gears, and she starts getting mad at me for catching them. She's like, "Who told you? Why are you here? You didn't trust me, did you?" And that last one made me laugh. I said, "You clearly haven't given me any reason to trust you. I mean, what did I just walk in on?" But she's getting mad at me. She starts saying that I'm insecure and she can't be with someone who's like this. And then she starts attacking my illness and she's saying things that I'm not the man she married and I'm weak and bringing her down. I literally had to tell her to shut up and not come home. I got on my car and drove back home. So somehow work got around to what had happened, and people from work started texting me, asking if it was true and if I was okay. Yeah, in that order. Shortly after that, I was supposed to get off of short-term disability. I asked to work from home for a little bit until I figured out what I wanted to do and how I was going to handle the situation. I knew that Sarah had the ability to pull the plug on my job, but I didn't want to lose my house or my kids, so I knew I needed this job. I needed to figure out my next move. First, I contacted my lawyer, and I told them I wanted to start the divorce process. Well, where I'm from, we have to separate first. So I was like, "Okay, yep, let's do that." Then a few days after that, I got a message from the same random number that texted me before. It was a video, and the video was all shaky, but you could tell there was Sarah and Trevor making out in her office again, on her desk. They were wearing different clothes, so it wasn't the same night that I caught them. Then another message came in, and it was another video. This time it was of Trevor and Sarah making out in her car in the parking lot. I saved them. All I replied was, "Thank you." And they responded with a thumbs up emoji. I sat there for a while wondering what I was going to do. I had to make it good. Then I knew there was an election coming up. And what I mean by that is that the person Sarah worked for had to be elected back into office. And the only way Sarah was going anywhere was if the person she worked for didn't get voted back in. So I contacted the person who was the opposition to Sarah's boss. I also happened to know that this person had a really good chance of getting in, but just needed a little bit more endorsements. I figured that this whole thing with Sarah could really look bad for Sarah's boss and their campaign. Well, when I contacted the opposition, I told them everything and sent them the videos that had been sent to me. I started endorsing this person, and as soon as this happened and the videos ended up getting spread all over the office. It totally divided the office. The organization had some really tense energy around it. And the whole process took about 5 months. During those 5 months, I had to go into the office and pretend like nothing was happening and that Sarah and I weren't going through a separation. But it was awkward. I'm not going to lie. And Trevor ended up getting let go. I don't even know exactly when, but Sarah let him go, and then she hired some 18-year-old intern. The intern was a girl. But not only that, as soon as these women at the office found out I was single, they were coming at me left and right and center. I hadn't had this kind of attention in years, and honestly, it felt good. Surely I flirted back. I'm not ashamed to admit that. But I'll never crap where I eat ever again. Then there, done that. My wife. Sucker punched me with a good-looking F-boy. Sarah tried to come home a few times and was apologizing, and she said she missed the kids. But I said she was never around before. She never mentioned anything about missing me or the kids. So the only thing that changed is that she's going to lose it all in a matter of months. Legally, I had to give her some visitation rights. So she did have the right to come and see them at scheduled times. But I wouldn't be there. My mom was in the house though while this was happening because I didn't actually trust Sarah. She was very much the person who would try to pull a fast one and lock me out of the house or attempt to brainwash the kids against me. I wasn't going to let that happen. Anyways, when the election came, Sarah's boss didn't get in. Eureka! Sweet, sweet revenge. Within a week, the opposition came in and they hired someone else to be there, Sarah. Not only that, but I was given a $15,000 promotion. We still have a bit to go on this road to divorce, but I just wanted to share my story. Think twice about dating anybody at work. You never know who you'll catch bending them over the desk you chose together. As for the messenger, I did end up asking Angela if it was her, but she was adamant that it wasn't. She thinks that maybe it was one of these women here that wanted to shack up with me for themselves. I like to think that it's Angela and she'll just never admit that it was her. I think she just really saw her chance to get rid of Sarah and took it.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
My name is Ben Brown, and I'm a 29-year-old computer engineer. I'm also a part owner of a small chain of used car dealerships, which my older and younger brothers manage. I live in California with my girlfriend of 3 years, Kathy Smith. We met when I first moved here, and she helped me find an apartment back when she was working at a real estate agency. Now, she's working for a law firm and studying to become a lawyer. I'm not the most social person and don't have any friends here. My only close friend, Mike, lives in Springfield, so we don't see each other often. Mike has a 3-year-old daughter who demands all his time and attention, and honestly, I wish I had a little girl who would do the same for me. With Kathy by my side, I was looking forward to building a happy future. She's always been open and made a point of including me in everything. Since we started dating, she's asked me to drive her to her girls' nights out, and I've ended up joining them on more than one occasion. Most of her friends are either lifelong friends or people she's known for over 20 years. So, life seemed pretty great. Between my job and the income from the car dealerships, I was making about $100,000 a year. I drove a BMW, and Kathy drove a Porsche. I was surprised when, one night, I spotted her car while driving home from work. She had told me she was spending time with a colleague who was feeling down, and the thought of going back to an empty house on a Friday night wasn't appealing, so I spent the evening with Mike, his wife Rose, and their daughter Maria instead. I stopped at a jewelry shop on my way back and bought the biggest stone that I could afford. It was time that I made Kathy mine to hold and cherish for the rest of my life. When I saw her car driving in front of me, I thought it was nice that the two of us would reach home together. I intended to start pampering her as soon as we got in the house and would make sure that when we came out of the house in the morning on Monday, we would be engaged to be married. Not that I had any doubts that she would say yes. She, however, seemed to have other plans and made a left about a mile before our exit. I do not know why, but I followed. It could just have been a reflex on my part. Her car stopped at the sidewalk and a tall, well-dressed man got down from the car. After taking a step away from the door, he leaned and took a handkerchief from his pocket and handed her from the window. I could see her putting the handkerchief in the dashboard as she blew him a kiss and drove off. As she stopped in front of a video rental, I drove past her and saw her taking a video from the dashboard and walking into the shop. It was late in the night, and I do not think she noticed me. I thought nothing of the man in the car with her, as it could be anyone who she agreed to drop on her way home. For all I know, he could be the husband of her friend who was feeling down. I reached home, and in about half an hour I heard her coming in. We had a light dinner, and then we retired to the bedroom. She went into the bathroom as I settled in for the night. She came back several minutes later wearing only a black lacy top and black thong. We ended up having sex. We slept late next morning, and it was close to noon when we woke up. I was the first to get up. As I got up, I saw her sleeping beside me. Her face was partially covered with hair, and she had a calm angel-like feel on her face. I walked up to my laptop and opened up my diary. I wrote in there how happy I felt today, and I also wrote about my plans for the evening. That reminded me. My plans needed the right ambience, and I had no candles in the house. I also wanted to buy some flowers and maybe something special for her. I rushed out so that I could buy the stuff I needed and got back home before she woke up. I found that my car had a flat tire, and I need to borrow her car. I hated this. Her car was too girly for me to be comfortable. I got in and drove to the supermarket. After shopping hastily, I got back in the car and drove back. I opened the dashboard looking for a napkin to wipe my hands. I saw a piece of cloth and, remembering the handkerchief from last night, took it out to wipe my hands with it. It was not a handkerchief. It was a soft satin thong. I recognized the thong immediately. It was one that we bought for our trip to Bali. So, if this was what the man handed to her, I could not think of anything. My mind was going numb. I felt my whole world crashing around me. I just sat there thoughtless. I was not angry, not hurt, and not thinking. There might be an explanation for his, was the first thought that came to my mind, but then I dismissed it. I have not handled any thongs ever that did not mean sex. As I drove home, I knew that all plans for my proposals had to be kept on hold. I could not walk into a marriage with doubts in my mind. Doubt is a horrible thing. It basically destroys relationships even when it is unfounded. As I drove into the garage, I could feel a surge of emotions. I was hurting. I was hurting bad. I needed this to be resolved fast. As I entered the apartment, I heard her speak over the phone. I cannot meet you tonight. I have just found out that Ben has plans for us this evening that are more important than me meeting you. After a brief silence, I heard her speak. Of course I love you more than I love Ben. But let us admit, you are not going to divorce that wife of yours, and I am not going to spend my life being a rich man's side piece. I wish that I could be with you always instead of this loser. He does not even recognize the fact that I might need some rough loving. Last night he was all mushy and romantic. I did not enjoy. I pretended. I am not a cold woman. I just do not love it when he is making love to me. Yet, I will say yes to marry him when he asks me tonight. This is unless you can find it in you to leave your wife and take me to be yours, the way I want it. I have had enough of this. There was just one fact. She was cheating on me. This was end of life as I knew it. I slammed the door so that she would know I had come. She simply put the phone down and walked up to me and kissed me as I entered the kitchen. Then she told me that she was going to take a bath and asked me to prepare the breakfast. I walked to the phone and picked it up and hit the redial button as soon as she was out of the kitchen. A lady answered the call, and I told her that this was a call from the phone company and that there was a fault in the phone lines and lots of complaints had been received. We were just checking if the phones were working fine because we would not want anyone charged for phone calls not made by them due to this mix-up. She thanked the phone company for taking care of this. Some small talk later, I had her phone number. Now I knew that he lived within a few miles from my house due to the area code. He must have lived near the place she dropped him. When she came out of the bathroom, I was still sitting in the kitchen, although the breakfast wasn't ready. I wasn't ready either to confront her. It had to be done in the right manner, at the right time. I was just too lost in thought when she said, "What's gotten into you? Did you hear a word of what I said?" I told her that I was distracted and told her a sob story about one of my classmates being in a fatal car accident and how I came to know of it today when I called up my brother. She said that she understood me. I just sat there thinking how wrong she was. She never understood me, or else she would not go around doing what she did. I passed the day sitting in a corner moping and feeling sorry for myself. By the time evening came, I was feeling sorry for her. She did not come from a very rich family, but had gotten used to a lavish lifestyle due to my money. She was going to lose that, and she had already lost me. It was then it dawned on me. She had one thing more to lose, her lover boy. All I had to do was make sure that she lost him, and then letting her know I knew would be better. She would be all alone. I knew that she would have all her friends, and they would give her some support. I made a few phone calls early next day and made an astounding discovery. The phone number belonged to a certain Roger Jones, husband of her friend Samantha. This was going to hurt her more than I thought. She might just end up losing her friends too. I was sorry for Samantha, though. She was the sweetest person you could meet. I remember one time when I was really sick and Kathy was out of town, Samantha had made a trip twice a day for a week to ensure that I was well fed and taken care of. Since that time, I saw her as my younger sister. We even joked about it when we met. Being very shy, I actually had not tried to befriend her too much, but I always felt good about seeing her around. I sleepwalked the whole day, and at the end of the day, I gave my 2 weeks notice to the company, letting them know I was quitting because I was planning on moving back home and not intended to stay on in California beyond the next month. My boss was shocked and offered me a raise and even promised to talk about a promotion with the management. He said I was too good an employee to lose for any reason. Next, I went and met Mike and told him what had transpired. I pulled no punches in giving him the details of what I knew. He was very understanding and gave me the right advice. Forget revenge and walk away. In my efforts to hurt Kathy, I would be hurt too. I knew that, but I knew any hurt would not pain as much as I pained right now. I knew that I was going to make Kathy regret what she had done to me. I reached home late in the evening to find that Kathy had not returned. I installed a key logging software on her computer and then took out the audio recording device and planted them in each of the rooms and then bugged the telephone so that I could monitor what was going on. All of it was being recorded in my laptop. All that I needed to hook up to my laptop was a small dongle that looked almost like a Bluetooth dongle. It was the receiver for all the microphones and recorded each microphone in a separate file. It was all very complicated, but for someone who was born to play with computers and gadgets, it was no big deal. I also installed a high-resolution video camera overseeing our bed. I was all set up by midnight and Kathy was still not home. She came in around 1 in the morning and was surprised to find me still awake. I acted normal and told her that I had a bit of surprise for her this weekend. I let her know that I was planning a party this weekend and I had an important announcement to make. She obviously thought that I was going to propose to her in front of the whole crowd and make a lot of fuss about it. She ought to have known me better. I am a very private person and would have done nothing of the sort. I asked her to invite all her friends in the party and also informed her that I had already invited her folks over for the party. I was not going to take any prisoners. People were going to get hurt, and I wanted her to be blamed for everything. Then I informed her that I was going away for a day the next morning and would not be back till following morning. Just as soon as I went to the shower, she called up Roger. As I came out of the bathroom, I saw her hanging up. I later heard the recording of the phone conversation where she asked him to come over the next day, and they would spend the day together. He suggested that he could pretend to go out of state and be with her not just the day but also the night. She then told him that she would love screwing him in my bed. It would complete his status as a cuck, she said, and then the two of them had a good laugh about it. I called up Samantha from my mobile as I left the house for office and asked her to meet me at a restaurant not too far from where she had her practice set up. She was a budding plastic surgeon and had quite a practice, someone so young. She was just 28 and barely out of med school, but her miraculous operation of a burn patient had been headlining news, and now she had a roaring practice for those who wanted to look flawless. When Samantha met me later that day, I told her what I knew and she was very calm about it all. She did not cry or even get angry. She just had a sad look in her eyes. She asked me what I intended to do next, and I told her about the recording and the plans that her husband and the love of my life had made. She said that since she would be opting for a divorce, the recordings would come in very handy. She, however, asked me if there was a need to humiliate them in public. I chose not to reply. I had no justification. I just had the urge. When I got home from the trip, I was welcomed with the warmth and affection that I deserved. I knew it was an act. I did not make any efforts to get physically close to her. It was almost revolting to even touch her. I had to do something about it. If I did not sleep with her in the same bed, she would ask questions and I might lose my composure and let her have it. I did not intend to give in so easily. I told her that I had a lot of work to finish as I was looking forward to getting the job I carried from client site finished up before weekend. I told her it might even result in a promotion and it would make the rest of life a lot easier. She bought that and I sat down on my computer with my headphones on and stared to put together a show for the people that were going the premiere of the video clip that I had collected. It had everything good sex tape could have. I suddenly find my eyes wet. I was crying. As I looked at the diamond ring I bought for her, I was feeling a sudden loss of faith. It was almost someone had ripped my heart out, and all that was left was an empty cage of ribs with a hollowness that was all-engulfing. I walked to the bedroom and looked at her and cried some more. Have you ever seen a grown man cry? You might someday, and it will not be a very pretty sight, I must assure you. It takes a lot of courage for a man to admit that he is hurting. I had found that courage, and I was just wondering if I could find enough courage in me to forgive her and not to go through with this sordid plan of mine. I did not have the courage to ask myself this question, not tonight, certainly not tonight. The next morning, I told Kathy that I was going to stay home all week, as I have to finish paperwork on the new client. She took it well. I also asked her to take a few days off and spend some time with me. I wanted her to know what she was going to miss in the years to come. I wanted her to taste luxuries that she had never known. I wanted her to know what she was throwing away. Every time that she would think back on our days together, the only question I wanted her to ask was, how could I be so stupid? Do you love me? This question took me by surprise. I had no idea what to say, but then I did say something smart. I love you more today than I will ever love you for the rest of my life. She narrowed her eyes and said, now, what is that supposed to mean? It's deep, baby. Real deep, I said in an almost comical tone. I just wanted this conversation to end. I took her shopping that day and spent a lot of money getting her a lot of expensive dresses. I picked one out for her to wear on the weekend party. It almost went close to a bridal dress. I could see she was pleasantly surprised. Then I took her to the most exclusive restaurants in town. I could see how excited Kathy was to come out to a place like this. I did take her out frequently, but mostly it was to places we would meet friends. The next step was to let her know what she could have had. Now, I am a man of modest habits and I do not spend much. In fact, I was able to save a little from what I made working. This also meant that I never touched a penny that I made from my business. Although Kathy knew I was loaded, she had no idea how much. I wanted her to get the idea. The next morning, I left my bank statement lying on the desk as I went to take a bath. It was a place I was sure she would find it. Later in the day, I heard a recording of her talking to one of her friends. Becca, you are going to flip out when you hear how much my darling Ben has just in his savings account. Then she gave her an obscene amount. No kidding. I had no idea the stakes were so high when I went around screwing with Roger. I am going to end all my association with Roger till the time I am safely married to Ben. She planned to end all her associations, for the time being. I was planning differently. I called up Roger in the evening and asked him to meet me at a small diner near his office. We had met on a few occasions when he had come to drop Samantha off to take care of me and had shared some small talk, but he was kind of surprised when I asked him to meet me. When I met him that day, I was almost on the verge of breaking every bone in his body. But I am a peaceful man, and I remember what my papa told me. Anger finds its best ally in a gentleman. As we sat down, I asked him if he had any idea why I asked him to meet me. He said that he did not have the faintest of the idea, but his voice betrayed him. I knew he knew I knew. I just came out in the open and told him to stay away from Kathy, and to make sure that Kathy never finds out that we ever talked. I told him in detail what me and my basketball buddies, I lied, I do not play basketball, would do to him if I ever found out he has met or talked to Kathy again. He said that Kathy called him in the morning and told him that she wanted to have nothing to do with him. I knew she did call him, but her words were, I do not want to have anything to do with you till I am safely married to Ben. He was lying to my face. Well, he had been doing a lot worse behind my back, so I guess this was okay for now. I told him that if he did not keep his word, Samantha would also find out. That scared the hell out of him. When he left the diner, he was just about as confident about his marriage as I was about sharks falling out of the sky on me during a storm. I called Kathy up on her cell phone and asked her to meet me at the office of the real estate agent who had helped me look for my current apartment. When she got there, I was already deep in conversation with the estate agent about a villa a few miles out of town. We drove out there, and I really liked the property and thought that this would be a good investment to make. Before we left the property, I told the estate agent that my lawyer will be in touch with him about the purchase of the property and also that I might want to buy it in the name of wife. This was the first time I had ever mentioned about marriage or wife in front of Kathy. As we drove off, she asked me if we could afford the mortgage on the house. Bitch. She knew that I could buy the villa with hard cash any given day, and she was acting as if she was not sure if I could afford it. Well, this was a villa she was never going to step again into. Then I called Samantha from my phone and asked her if she could help Kathy buy some new shoes and designer dresses for our trip to France the next week. She was most glad to help. I told Kathy to spend as high as $10,000 and that she could charge it to her credit card and I would pay up later. That night she came home with some beautiful designer garments. I jokingly asked her if she had bought insurance for them. She just smiled and she looked genuinely happy. I could see how much it was going to hurt her. I spread out the dresses on the bed and asked her to get us some red wine to drink and celebrate tonight. When I was on my 5th glass, I accidentally spilled wine all over her dresses and ruined them. It was heartbreaking for me. Nah, it was not. I was enjoying every minute of it. Now, here was a maxed-out credit card that would keep her busy for the next year. It was Friday night, and I was not going to let the night end so easy. I finally spoke to her and told her that this amount was peanuts for me, and then showed her my bank statement when she acted as if she did not believe me. Then I took her out on the terrace and showed her the engagement ring that I had bought a few days ago. Then I told her all the dreams I had for her and me, 2 kids, a son and a daughter, and a small villa on the outskirts of the town. I told her that I had waited all my life to feel completely in love, and then I told her about the good times that we had together. I took her back to the day when I told her for the first time that I loved her. I told her that I loved the way that she looked and smelled on that day. I could recall the dress she was wearing, the glint in her eyes, and it hurt me a little as I thought how little she thought of these things. I took her inside and switched on the music system as I sat down next to her, holding her in my arms for one last time. At that time, I knew I was not going to walk out of this mess unhurt. I was going hurt as much as I was going to hurt her. The only good thing was that since I was already hurting, there was nothing new that was going to happen to me tomorrow at the party but for her. It would be the first day of the rest of her life. I said that it was getting late, and we had a big day ahead of us. We needed to sleep a little. The next morning, I woke up early and called the catering company and made sure that everything was set. I then checked my answering machine for any message from people that were not going to make it. There was one from Samantha that said that she was not sure she and her husband would be able to come, but she would give us a clear picture in the evening. The message was addressed to Kathy, so I told her that Samantha had called and left a message. Then I asked if she could persuade Samantha to turn up with her husband because I really liked her and would like her to be present in the evening. I heard her call up Samantha and ask her to make sure that they did turn up. Samantha handed the phone to Roger, who at first agreed that he could not come, but at last relented into coming. As the evening approached, the caterers came, and the whole house was abuzz with activity. I did not even realize when our first guest arrived. When her parents came in, I walked up to them and thanked them for coming in. Mike came with Rose and Samantha arrived with Roger. I was ready to rock and roll. Mike asked everybody to gather around as I had some important to say. I stood up and started to speak. Tonight I have called up all of you. Some who I love, some who Kathy loves, and a few that we both love. It is the last day that Kathy and I are spending as girlfriend and boyfriend. Kathy was still smiling. I am going to play a small video clip over here and let you decide if what I feel is right. Every time that I look at Kathy, I feel deep in my heart that I am right. At this cue, Mike dimmed the light, and Rose started the video clip that was projected on the living room wall. I walked towards Mike and Rose and stood on the opposite side of the room from where Kathy was sitting. Rose hugged me tight, and Mike put his arms across my shoulder. I just then saw Samantha walk towards us. She needed the support as well. I whispered to Rose to be with Samantha, and she let go of me to hold Samantha's hand. The video started. It was all about the days that we had spent together. I had tears in my eyes and I was shaking. I knew what was coming next. Kathy stopped smiling. The image on the screen was that of her talking on the phone, and the voiceover was still mine say, "I love to watch her so much that I even had cameras all over the house, so that I could see her doing sweet nothings on TV when she was not around. I had voice recorders all over the house, so that I could hear her breath on my music system when she was not around. These were my home videos." Then her voice came over. "I am going to marry Ben, and nothing is going to stop me." This sentence was edited from a phone conversation that she had with Becca. Then the video of her talking on the phone faded away, and faded in another video of her undressing and of Roger sitting on her bed in her bedroom. There was a large thump in the semi-darkness, and just then Mike switched on the lights and Rose stopped the video. I walked calmly into the center of the room and said, "For all who want to see this video fully, please visit me later. I plan on having private viewings of these videos every weekend till people are bored of it and I have no viewers." Then I turned my attention to the direction where the loud thump came from. Her father was lying on the floor with no one around. It was about then that the first person spoke. It was her mother. "Please someone have a look at my husband. He seems to have had a heart attack." She was crying. I felt bad. They were not evil. But then we all pay for what our children do, don't we? I rushed to his side and Samantha was quick to get to his assistance. Kathy was still sitting in the chair and had not uttered a word. Roger had a defeated look on his face and was standing in a corner facing the wall. The party soon broke up. Left in the room were Kathy, Mike, Rose and I. Mike said they would step out of the room if we wanted to talk alone. I told them that would not be necessary. I sat down on the couch and asked Rose if she would kindly fix me a drink. Then I turned to Kathy and spoke to her for the first time in the whole evening. "So, I guess this is goodbye then." She looked at me and for the first time a tear appeared in her eyes. "I am so sorry." I broke her in the middle and started speaking. It was never meant to happen. It just happened and I did not know how to stop. Swear to God I never meant to hurt you. I love you, and this was nothing but a physical thing that meant nothing. I have no feelings for Roger. I need you. Can we find some way to work this out? She could not believe what she was seeing. I was being hurtful and rash, something that she would never expect me to be. I was the sissy, the cuck. I said, "If this is not what you were going to say, please complete what you started. But if this is what you were going to say, I have said it and it means nothing to me." She just sat there sobbing. Rose had not gone fix a drink. She had gone to pack up Kathy's bag. As she came out with her bag, Kathy realized what was going on. She was going to get thrown out of the house. She had just seen her father being taken away to a hospital, so she knew for sure that she did not have her parents' place to go. Becca had left the room in a hurry, and I was sure that she would not like to keep her company, as it would cast a doubt on her character as well. So that was another place she could not go. I had carefully snapped her debit card earlier in the evening and removed all but $13 from her purse. Her credit card was maxed out, and she did not have a car anymore. It did not look all that good to me, but then she was still to find out about the debit card and the missing money from her purse. She looked at me and pleaded, "You are not going to throw me out like this. Doesn't our time together mean anything to you? Did it mean anything to you when you went to bed with that a-hole?" I asked. She just sat there saying nothing. "I would love to have thrown you on the streets tonight, but that is not going to happen. Is it?" She looked at me. "You are not going to throw me out on the streets?" "I am going to throw you out on the street because I am sure when he screwed you, he must have left some stink in there." I spat venomously. Mike walked up to me and said, "Ben, you are a better person than this." Kathy looked at him and pleaded, "Mike, please don't let him do this to me." Mike looked at her and spoke to me again. "You are a better person than this. You should not speak in such manner to anyone. If you're going to throw her out of the house, do it quickly. Don't waste our time. She is not worth looking at anyways." I looked at him. He was toying with her. His words were the final nail in the coffin for Kathy. She knew that no one was going to speak for her. I had already taken her keys to the house from her purse earlier in the evening along with her car keys. Now all I had to do was walk her out the door and lock the door behind her. That is precisely what I did. That was the last time I saw Kathy or heard from her. Roger got divorced and is now paying alimony to his already successful ex-wife. I did date Samantha for some time, but nothing went ahead. I guess it will take some time for me to find the love of my life. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
My wife, who's 36, and I, who's 39, have been together for 7 years and married for 5. We've had our share of good and bad times like any couple, but I believed our relationship was strong with trust and love. We both had regular jobs, and though we weren't rich, we were happy and comfortable. About a year ago, my wife, let's call her Anna, got really interested in personal finance. She started reading books, watching YouTube videos, and going to seminars on the topic. I supported her new interest, thinking it was great that she wanted to improve our finances for a better future. Honestly, I don't know much about finance. Besides basic things like mutual funds, I'm pretty clueless about investing. I only have a superficial understanding and don't invest much except in mandatory tax-saving schemes. Coming from a marketing background, I have limited exposure to finance, so I usually rely on tax consultants like most people do. With the rise of finance influencers on social media, Anna got into learning about it too. She wanted to understand the stock market and cryptocurrency. While I get the stock market, crypto is way beyond my understanding. I did join Anna for a few virtual seminars at first, but the concept seemed alien to me. Things were fine until she started spending more time with a wealthy investor she met at one of these seminars, whom she called D. D was supposedly mentoring her on investing and wealth building. The mentoring concept is becoming more common in America, with everyone claiming to be a mentor. She also stopped contributing money to household expenses, saying she was investing in our future. I trusted her and managed all the household bills on my own. I didn't pay much attention, but as weeks turned into months, their relationship raised serious concerns. Anna spent a lot of time with Dee, even late into the night. She justified it by saying she had a day job and evening was the only time for her passion. When I expressed my concerns, she got defensive and belittled me for not understanding investments. She mocked me, saying she'd make us rich and I'd regret not supporting her. I tried not to interfere, but when the red flags became obvious, I had to be alert. She also started dressing provocatively, but I didn't bring it up since I'd never commented on her clothes before. However, she neglected our relationship, so I confronted her. As usual, she brushed off my concerns, saying she was securing our future, and I should be supportive, not judgmental. Gradually, I became distant because I felt like I was carrying the relationship alone. I thought she'd notice, but she was too busy learning about investments, and we became more like housemates. We rarely spoke unless it was important, even though we lived in the same house. After her day job, she went out for seminars or mentorship classes. One evening, I walked past the seminar hall where Anna's mentor, Dee, used to teach a finance class. Something prompted me to go inside and see what was happening. Upon entering, I noticed a different event taking place. I inquired with the security staff about Dee's company seminars and their frequency. They informed me that these seminars were not regular, with the last one occurring months ago. Outside, I saw some guys in t-shirts promoting a finance masterclass with the influencer's name. I approached them, got details, and took note of everything. The influencer held seminars every 2 to 3 months, but mentorship classes, led by mentors like Dee in cafes, were weekly from 7 to 9 p.m. Anna used to come home after midnight. I gathered details from the cafe and left. The next day, I asked Anna if she had a class that day, and she curtly replied, "I have classes every day." Despite this, I knew from my previous findings that the class was only on Saturdays. In the evening, I visited the cafe and witnessed Anna in an intimate situation with Dee. I observed them exchanging flirtatious glances and recorded their interactions. I stood at a distance, watching until they engaged in a more intimate act. I recorded it when they were about to kiss, and then sat at their table, identifying myself as Anna's soon-to-be ex-husband. Anna tried to explain it as a one-on-one mentoring session, but I sarcastically remarked on the close mentoring. The other guy laughed and left, showing a player's attitude. Directly asking Anna if she slept with the other guy, she admitted to it, justifying it as part of an investing deal. She claimed it was a component of her personal finance education, where Dee promised significant earnings after completing the classes and fulfilling his requests, which included sleeping with him. She agreed to it, and I sensed she was trying to justify her actions. I played along for a while, asking if it was consensual. She confirmed it, saying it was a one-time thing for our future. Losing my temper, I shouted at her, questioning why she took it upon herself to secure our future. I told her she didn't need to think about mine. I could handle it. I yelled so loudly that people nearby glared at us. I stood up and left the cafe. Outside, she tried to hold my arms, but I shrugged her off, telling her to go to her mentor and not come home. Returning home devastated, I couldn't believe she used the pretext of learning personal finance to hide her infidelity. A few minutes later, Anna arrived, claiming it wasn't for fun. She slept with him to learn money-making tricks. I asked her to leave the house, and she pleaded, insisting it wasn't cheating but part of a business. I couldn't understand what kind of business she was involved in. I told her there was no point sleeping with her mentor to learn personal finance. She could earn actual money without doing so. She got angry, saying she'd prove me wrong, calling me too old-fashioned to understand modern concepts. She went into a mode of showing off her potential earnings, claiming she'd be a billionaire while I'd retire with little money. I told her she could do whatever she wanted, but not while with me. She packed her stuff and left. 2 days later, on Saturday, she returned, stating she wasn't there to apologize but to take her remaining stuff. I didn't respond, and she drove off. She seemed unremorseful, choosing her actions over our relationship. Update. Not much has occurred except for the divorce, so here's a quick update. Anna didn't come close to learning personal finance. It looked more like a scam than an investment. I don't know a lot about it, but anyone promising quick money and huge returns is suspicious. Making money genuinely isn't easy, and it certainly doesn't happen overnight. But it's not my concern anymore. My divorce was finalized last week, and it went smoothly. I don't have significant wealth for her to fight over. Our home was a rented condo. In terms of alimony, she earned almost as much as me. Also, she cheated, so she isn't entitled to pay alimony. The joint account is closed, and we split the money. We don't have children, so there's no question of child support. Thank goodness we don't have kids. It would have complicated things. It's not as easy as it sounds. I'm still coping with her cheating. She's been telling everyone I'll come back, begging for reconciliation when she's rich, after learning about personal finance risks. I wished her luck. Show everyone that our divorce happened because I was insecure about her progress. She labeled me as controlling and jealous, but I listened with a smile and showed everyone the video I recorded of her with the fair partner. She hid her face after that, and common friends quickly changed their alliances. The last I heard about her, she was living with her mom during the divorce period. She's definitely not remorseful for what she destroyed. I don't know if she's genuinely learning personal finance or investing, or if it was just an excuse for an affair. If she succeeds in sorting her finances, good for her. I don't want money tainted with infidelity. By the way, recently I started watching a lot of videos on investing. I might be jumping to conclusions too fast. I don't know, but with ample free online videos providing enough information for beginners, I highly doubt you need a mentor for this. It's something you can self-examine. Right now, I'm trying to distance myself from any conversation that involves her. It was mentally draining. I've picked up my painting hobby to keep myself distracted, joined a fitness club to shed extra calories, and I'm focusing on eating healthy and keeping drinks in check. I drank too much during the pre-divorce period and gained a lot of extra pounds. I'll update the list if anything progresses. Update. It wasn't a finance class, it was a scam, and that's the truth. The main point in this update is that Anna fell wounded person to a scam. Remember that finance influencer who conducted seminars? Turns out he was a scam artist, deceiving people and making false promises of significant returns. Anna invested about 30% of her income in that scheme, even selling valuable assets like her family heirloom diamond ring and platinum necklace to go all in. It appears everything was just a scam. The influencer is now on the run, and his teammates, including the affair partner, have been arrested with an ongoing investigation. After this news broke, those Anna had boasted to about her impending riches mocked her. She had flaunted her newfound knowledge, belittling those with limited investment understanding. Now, those same people are targeting and making fun of her. Apparently, she blocked many of those mocking her, even dedicating her social media account due to being tagged in posts related to the finance influencer she supported. It's a lesson in not boasting before achieving victory, something she had been doing all along. I've made significant progress, shedding extra weight and getting into muscle training, which I enjoy. I've also returned to painting, and it feels really good. I haven't rushed into dating yet, not because I'm trying to forget the past, but simply because I'm not ready for it. Clearly, he was a scammer who managed to deceive her. Update. I had a visitor, and it turned out to be Anna. She looked really sad and told me she had fallen for a scam. A business partner and his boss, who was into fraud, had cheated a lot of people, including her, and ran off with their money to another country. I asked if the partner got caught, but she said no. The partner and a few other mentors were close to the fraud boss and managed to escape at the right time, leaving the rest of the team behind. I asked if she came to me because her partner ran away, but she said no. She claimed she loved me and wanted to talk. I reminded her that we were already divorced, so there was no point in talking. She said karma punished her. She lost a lot of money and respect, and people were mocking her. She pointed out that I came out fine from the situation and asked what more I wanted. I told her I wanted peace, her out of my life, and at that moment, out of my house. She then suggested that now that she and Dee had nothing between them, we could get back together. I disagreed, saying Dee wouldn't have taken her because he had many women like her learning money-making tricks. She pleaded for reconciliation, saying she wasn't emotionally involved with her partner and got carried away by the idea of getting rich quickly. I made it clear that getting back together was not an option. I had moved on, and her pleading didn't affect me. If she had pleaded when her affair was exposed, I might have considered forgiveness, but seeing her true colors changed that. She came back to me only after losing everything, still mocking me as she left the house. During the divorce, she showed no remorse. Now, when she lost everything, she came to me. Unbelievable. I told her to leave because I had to go to my fitness class. She commented on my appearance, asking if I was dating someone. I said it was none of her business. She started crying, saying I was rude. I told her she should thank me for being civil and listening to her. After what she did, she shouldn't be allowed in my house. Despite that, I remained polite and entertained her. She held my hands and kept apologizing. I told her crying and begging meant nothing to me now. I used to love her, but I've moved on. She left after I became cold toward her pleas. A few days later, her mother called, asking to meet urgently. I agreed, and over coffee the next day, she apologized for Anna. I hugged her and said it wasn't her fault. She didn't need to say sorry. Unlike Anna, she had always been sweet to me, even during the divorce, and didn't speak badly about me. She asked me if I could get back together with Anna because she felt Anna was really sorry for what she did. She explained that Anna was constantly crying and falling into depression. She was worried that Anna might even become suicidal because she lost all her savings, part of her monthly salary, and some valuable jewelry pieces, which I had mentioned before. I didn't know Anna had lost her savings. Anna was always saving, and I'm sure she had at least $100,000. Losing such a large amount of money can affect anyone's mental health. I questioned how getting back together would help Anna deal with the depression from losing money. She said that Anna truly loved me, and even in her lowest moments, having me in her life could bring her some happiness. To be honest, I did feel sorry for Anna. I even briefly considered getting back together, but that feeling didn't last long. I quickly returned to my decision not to take her back. I told her I couldn't do it. I didn't love her anymore. It turned into a cycle of tears and pleas to help her daughter avoid depression. I stood firm on my decision and suggested taking Anna to therapy. She needed counseling more than a husband. My ex-mother-in-law was disappointed that I declined her request, but understood my perspective. There was one more thing that would have upset Anna more, and that was my investment journey. I followed some genuine finance YouTubers who helped me understand personal finance and investing on a broader level. This knowledge greatly assisted in building my portfolio, and guess what? I'm already making a good profit. I've ventured into the stock and bond markets too. However, I'm still unsure about crypto trading and don't want to step into unfamiliar territory. I'm taking things at a steady pace, learning one thing at a time. Understanding the stock market has reinforced my belief that making money takes time, patience, and courage. I'm hoping to come out of this stronger before thinking about dating again. I still don't feel ready for it. Second story. I'm a 37-year-old guy, and I've been married to Judy, who's 32, for 2.5 years. It's tough to pinpoint a specific moment that defines everything, but things took a bad turn after a frustrating phone call. I was in the living room catching up on football highlights I missed when Judy's phone started ringing, annoyingly interrupting the game. Fed up with the ringtone cutting into the commentary, I brought her phone to the kitchen, asking her to answer it. Then, the phone rang again, and she seemed ready to snap at the caller. Since we both worked in the corporate world, Judy had a rule about keeping our work life separate from our home life. She believed it was our responsibility to separate the two and encouraged me to do the same. She avoided work calls on weekends and preferred emails for urgent matters. I expected her to get upset, but she stayed silent, and her expression changed. It wasn't until dinner that she shared what the call was about. "They are transferring out of state," she said. "Transfer? Why? Where?" I asked, realizing the situation. "I told you about the company's expansion. The board wants to transfer people to the new site to monitor branch development," she explained. I understood how transfers usually worked, often without external commitment. Being married, she wouldn't be considered for a transfer unless she requested it. I asked if she applied, and she said no. I suggested rejecting it, but she explained it came with a promotion she'd been working hard for. Judy was ambitious, a quality I admired. For a year, she worked tirelessly for the promotion, volunteering and ensuring her team functioned smoothly. It was finally paying off, although not in the way we expected. Her salary doubled with perks, but I knew it wasn't about the money. She wanted to climb the corporate ladder. "What should I do?" she asked. It wasn't her fault, but she put me in a tough spot. I had two options: tell her to reject the transfer, losing the promotion, or support her pursuit of her hard-earned career advancement. Thinking people make long-distance marriages work, although I hadn't seen many examples, I convinced myself it could be done. Not wanting to hold her back, I told her, "I'm going to support you. Whatever decision you make, we can make it work." Boy, do I regret those words. Her eyes lit up, and I thought I made the right decision. I convinced myself it would work, remembering friends who traveled for business and sustained their marriages. Looking back, she didn't really leave me much of an option to refuse. If I had honestly shared my opinion and asked her not to take the job, she would have considered it. But knowing Judy well, I sensed it would come at a cost, possibly leading to the collapse of our marriage. I didn't want that. I also disliked the idea of her being far away. However, if our marriage hung in the balance, the lesser evil seemed to be letting go. It looked like the only logical decision, and faced with a similar situation again, I'm not sure if I would choose differently. She spent the evening thanking me for being understanding, but I couldn't shake the wave of irritation, realizing my wife had manipulated me into feeling self-conscious so that my decision favored her. I was sure she had baited me. However, it's hard to say. A manager, seeing her excitement after finalizing travel arrangements, and I had a lengthy discussion about making the marriage work. We planned to call every day to stay involved in our daily lives. The idea of cheating never crossed my mind because I believed Judy was too goal-oriented, especially since her company agreed to give her 5 days off every month. "It'll work," she assured me just before boarding the plane. Little did I know that my marriage had ended in that instant. Every long-distance relationship starts the same way. Calls around the clock, even with Bluetooth earphones so we could talk while she worked. For the first 2 months, it seemed to work. We were on the phone more, and I knew more about her life than when I lived with her. Suddenly, it didn't feel like I'd made the wrong decision prioritizing her ambition over my needs. We were in a good place, at least until 2 months ago. Judy called one morning to cancel her trip back to Michigan. Her company's quarterly performance had been below par, and she had to work on recruiting more capable professionals to fill out administrative roles to make her job easier. I didn't mind, as I was on the verge of closing a huge deal that would give me more flexibility in how I worked. The compensation for closing the deal was worth millions. With that, I could be closer to my wife. 5 days were inconsequential when I could be with her as long as I wanted. I kept the deal a secret to surprise her after it was sealed. To make that happen, I needed to be at my best, which meant no distractions of any type. I didn't call her, and she didn't call me. It was the longest we had gone without talking on the phone. We still texted on WhatsApp, but we were both too busy for meaningful conversation. I'm explaining everything because a few days ago, a mutual friend called me callous and manipulative after hearing what happened. If you ask me, I'm neither of those things. I consider myself a wounded person, which is why I'm here recounting everything between myself and Judy. Anyway, back to the story. The big deal came through, ensuring my family's financial security for life. It was a game changer, making me part of the elite 10% of America in terms of wealth. That night, while waiting for confirmation, I resisted the temptation to call her. I wanted to tell her about the past week and how our lives would change. Judy's biggest dream was a trip to Paris. Instead of calling her, I planned our vacation there: ticket, hotel, food, places to visit. I had everything sorted out and was going to break the news together, all at once. I scrolled through my WhatsApp and landed on her story. She was hugging this guy, Henry. Tall, olive skin, brown hair, blue eyes. He looked no younger than 35. He was the first person employed when she started working. He was from the area, knew about the job, and she needed his expertise. Underneath the picture, she captioned, "Dark times reveal angels." I should have suspected something was wrong. I think I did because I held off from telling her that the deal came through when it did. Instead, I took the next available flight I could find to California to see her. As you may have already guessed, she was having an affair with Henry. I phoned Judy's workplace in Michigan to find out where she was, since I planned a surprise visit. Luckily, the receptionist who answered was a mutual friend, so convincing her not to tell Judy was easy. Throughout the flight, I imagined scenarios of how Judy might react. After sharing news of the deal, I went straight to her branch from the airport, hoping to have dinner with her to break the news. However, I learned she hadn't reported to work that day, so I had to Uber myself to the given address. I wondered why the branch receptionist was surprised to find that Judy was married, but I didn't press, since I knew Judy liked to keep her life private. After climbing 4 flights of stairs, I arrived at her door with a bouquet of flowers behind my back. Right before knocking, I heard Judy moan, "Keep going, keep going." It made me sick. Just 5.5 months away and she cheated. Rage surged, but I tried to stay composed. I left her apartment and drove back to her office to instruct the receptionist not to mention my visit, even tipping her $100. I stayed in a hotel close to her apartment to keep a close watch. Over the week, I discreetly followed her with a rental car, and she didn't suspect a thing. She moved between work, yoga, and her apartment, making it easy to track her. This is how I found out she spent a lot of time with Henry, and it wasn't hard to deduce he was the one she was cheating with. I called and messaged her during this time, but she used work as an excuse and begged me to give her space to get her professional life in order. At that moment, I decided not to let myself be played by her anymore. I drafted divorce letters and waited for her return with Henry. It seemed like all they did was have closeness. Upon arriving at her door, I heard nothing but moans, grunts, and groans. I picked the lock, tiptoed to her bedroom with my phone, recording everything. As disgusting as it was to watch, I recorded a full minute of their relationships before revealing myself. In that moment, while she scrambled for clothes, I felt powerful. Seeing her anguish when I threatened to share the video with her colleagues and family justified my decision to end things. She begged for forgiveness, saying she'd resign and go to therapy, but I was disgusted by her actions, unable to entertain her pleas. She said she resigned and dropped off signed divorce papers yesterday, but I still sent the video to her parents. I want them to see the kind of person their child became. Some comments suggested she checked out of the relationship when she took the job. She had been wanting this for a while, and probably cheating on you for a while as well. She manipulated you into agreeing to take the job, practically forcing you into saying yes. Huge, life-changing decisions like that will have a drastic impact on the family. Update. My wife got moved to a different state to oversee the opening of her company's new branch. While there, she started a relationship with a coworker. I found out about it during a surprise visit after our divorce. I took some time to sort myself out, and for a bit, I was occupied enough to not dwell on the whole situation. I went on vacation to the Dominican Republic for a week, which was pretty awesome. One evening, I got a Reddit notification about a post. When I wrote it, I mainly wanted to vent my anger, irritation, disgust, and rage. Surprisingly, it gained a lot of attention. Reading through the comments, one post stood out. Someone shared a similar experience, mentioning feeling miserable for not taking revenge to the extent needed to satisfy their spirit. It might sound strange, and it was definitely an unpopular opinion, as many people, judging by their comments, were content with me just exposing her infidelity to her parents and getting her fired without going further. It was somewhat satisfying to see her relationship with her parents fall apart after the video, but other than that, it seemed like I hadn't accomplished much. Last I heard, she was in a motel working at a night bar, fittingly ironic for the cheater she is. About 3 weeks after returning from the Dominican Republic, she showed up at my door, begging me to forgive her and take her back. It was amusing to watch. She seemed like all she did was cry in her spare time, bloodshot, swollen, and puffy eyes. Whether it was from crying or dealing with some issues, I didn't care. In fact, I realized there wasn't much I could do to her. She was already an emotional wreck. I decided to shift my focus to the guy she cheated on me with, Henry. I let her in, and she probably thought I was reconsidering the divorce because she immediately started explaining herself, thinking I hadn't gone through with it. She even claimed to have lost her parents' respect and that my actions made her regret what she did. I posed a test question, something I knew she'd fail, just to be sure I wasn't seen as callous or wicked for having a justified motive. I looked her in the eye and asked how many times it happened. You'd expect her to learn from the experience and regain some dignity by telling the truth, but she said once, swearing it was the truth. According to her, running a failing business, with expenses 3 times more than revenue, became a burden. She didn't want to burden me further, thinking she already asked too much by pursuing her ambition. I wasn't bothered by her excuses. What stunned me was how effortlessly she could lie to my face. It was hard to believe our entire relationship had any truth to it after that. My dad always thought it was almost impossible to look someone in the eye and lie. Well, he was way off. Honestly, I wasn't sure how many times they got together, but I had a sense of when it started, and it definitely wasn't just once. I might have doubted her lies if I hadn't followed her for the first 2 weeks in Michigan, and on the day I arrived, she was making quite a scene in her room. Her obsession with privacy didn't matter much then, but I kept my cool and didn't let on that I knew. What about Henry? Who knows? He's probably still in Michigan with his wife. Imagine my surprise when I found out Henry was married. Despite the frustration, I stayed calm. I saw an opportunity to extend my revenge to hurt not only her, but also Henry. There was no way he'd walk away without facing the consequences. I didn't need a mirror to know my acting skills weren't Oscar-worthy, but the way she eagerly spilled everything, including lies about how Henry manipulated her, made me sure she was unsuspecting. I was baiting her. After telling her to give me time to think, I ushered her out and immediately sent the video to everyone who knew her, including her receptionist friend at the office. First, I booked a ticket to Michigan to use the information Judy gave me about Henry's marriage, but I planned to damage him where it hurts. I rented a studio apartment close to him, watching from a distance, waiting for the videos of his escapades with my ex-wife to drop. Meanwhile, I observed his wife, Annie. She was gorgeous, with flowing blonde hair, stormy gray eyes, and a scary smile. Although my initial plan was to bait her into a compromising situation, I had a change of heart. But I know what you're thinking. Aside from the money, I'm a pretty decent-looking guy. Decent enough to be prom king? Anyway, Annie was a kind and genuinely caring person. I was particularly surprised by her honesty. We went from greeting by the roadside to having coffee over an accidental bump, and I orchestrated it over coffee. I learned a lot about her, and for some days, I forgot why I was in Michigan in the first place. It was one of those friendships that was just easy to keep. I even started seeing less of Henry for a while, thinking the plan didn't go as I wanted. Apparently, he'd been fired and spent all his time looking for a new job, trying not to raise suspicion from Amy. During our discussions, I learned Henry was an immigrant who came to the United States on a student visa. Amy also told me about her marital issues. She explained how her husband barely touched her and barely paid her any mind until about 2 months ago when things suddenly changed. What she didn't know was that she provided enough information to ruin Henry's story. They hadn't been married for 3 years, meaning Harry wasn't a citizen, even if he had applied for the green card. I needed Amy to turn on her husband, so I told her the truth about everything. At first, she was mad at me for lying, but she soon got over it. I showed her the video and explained how it haunted my dreams, knowing they were both going about their miserable lives, not justifiably affected by their actions. Luckily, it didn't take much to convince Amy. In the next hour, we planned how she would confront Henry. I wasn't there to witness the drama, but I made sure he knew I was behind everything bad happening to him. Last I heard, he was getting deported to wherever he came from. Honestly, now I can say I feel satisfied.